Welcome to the community panel of the Central Michigan Climate Solutions Summit. I'm Marie Coper, Community Coordinator for the Solutions Summit. And last session, we heard examples from Central Michigan University. Now we have community members representing 4 different avenues for implementing solutions. They will each spend about 10 minutes describing their solutions, and then we'll open it up to your questions, which we invite you to enter in the chat. We'll get to as many questions as time permits. There are other important avenues like agriculture that we just didn't have time to cover, but today the 4 that we have with us are a governmental unit with Mount Pleasant's Mayor Will Joseph and the City Manager Nancy Ridley. Secondly, we'll have an individual initiative with Dr. James Hageman and the TreesNOW Isabella Project. Thirdly, an organization with Emily Zoot, a volunteer with Mount Pleasant Citizens Climate Lobby and Citizens Climate Education. And fourth, a business with Laura Coffey, who works with Greentree Grocery. So for our government example, today we have a team. Will Joseph has been mayor of Mount Pleasant since January 2019, was elected to the City Commission in 2017, had worked at the City Water Department, and also served on the Mount Pleasant Planning Commission. He is a graduate of CMU. Nancy Ridley has been Mount Pleasant City Manager since 2015, after serving 7 years as Assistant City Manager and 17 years as Mount Pleasant's Director of Finance. Nancy Ridley is also a graduate of CMU. Mayor, why don't you begin for us? Oops, you'll unmute. There we go.
Can you hear me, Marie?
There you are. Loud and clear.
Thank you.
Very good. Thanks.
Hello, my name is William Joseph, and I am currently serving as the mayor of Mount Pleasant. I want to first thank Marie Coper, Dr. Bradshaw, Teresa Hamzai, and others who have helped along the way to put on the Central Michigan Climate Solutions Summit. I would also like to thank our friends at CMU and President Davies for their participation and sharing about their operations. Within the community, we have a great panel, and I look forward to hearing about their contributions and plans to fighting climate change. I encourage everyone to stick around and listen to Dr. Andrew Hoffman, our keynote speaker, who I'm sure will have much to share. Today, I would like to give an overview of what Mount Pleasant does to serve its residents and surrounding community to be sustainable and meet the challenge of climate change. First, it is important to define what do we mean by sustainable. Sustainability can have several different meanings that are not necessarily what we may expect. Do we mean sustainable finances? What does sustainable pertain to, and for how long? For me, I define sustainability to be defined as practices that conserve resources, are mutually beneficial to the consumer and the environment, and can be practiced perpetually. To be intentional about our practices and understand the importance of future solutions, we must first understand the problem. Everyone has heard of rising CO2 levels in our atmosphere and the effect it has on increasing the greenhouse effect. Mount Pleasant plays a major role in the shopping, transportation, education, recreation, and leisure center of mid-Michigan. Every day, we have people who come to town, often in cars, to take part in some activity in town, and we average 23,553 cars every day on Mission Road. How do we make a difference by lowering our CO2 emissions, while also supporting our local economy that is vital to our residents? The approach Mount Pleasant has taken, like so many other municipalities, is to make our community accessible to non-motorized transportation. While we can't possibly eliminate every car on the road in Mount Pleasant, and neither would we want to yet, we do have in our power to make our residents more incentivized to take part in riding their bike or walking to make that experience enjoyable. 2 things must be in place. 1, you have to make transportation lines available and design your city to make quick trips to work, school, the park, or the market a reality. Our lines of transportation start with sidewalks. The city currently has over 90 miles of sidewalks and is expanding and replacing every year to make walking routes available and enjoyable. Mount Pleasant is a city roughly 7 square miles. It is easy for an able-bodied adult to walk from one end to the other and across without much time or difficulty. I know because I do it often for leisure, exercise, shopping, or just to blow off some steam. Our sidewalks are important to not only our atypical resident, but especially to the 25% of our residents who, according to census data, lack a vehicle for transportation. And those people often lack financial resources. As many have noted previously, I, as a policymaker, must pay attention to the climate crisis and its effects will have the harshest outcomes for those who have low socioeconomic status. Recently, the City Commission has endorsed a plan to keep our sidewalks open even during the snow season. For many years, our public works employees have cleared sidewalks for school routes or roughly 14 miles of sidewalk. The city is now in an effort to increase over the next several years that amount to over 45 miles, which will cover over 90% of our residential sidewalks. This will ensure that even when the weather is cold, our community will be as safe, accessible, and walkable during the entire year round. Our transportation lines include bike lanes and routes. Mount Pleasant has invested in striping roads with bike lanes and providing signage to bring awareness to lanes, routes, and safety measures people need to consider while sharing the road. Generally, Mount Pleasant is a flat city, which means bicycling is ideal and highly accessible. With our high traffic volumes and constantly changing community, I am always impressed by the low number of bicycle accidents involving vehicles, but it goes without saying, one is too many. As we move forward, Mount Pleasant will be focused on designing transportation pathways that are safer and more efficient for everyone. The second key part to non-motorized transportation is how you design your city. As we look forward to plan, we are trying to shape our city with the concept akin to the 5-minute neighborhood. This idea is that within a 5-minute walk, someone can find a market, a park, some light shopping, or a restaurant, and potentially be at work. This involves zoning and planning and increasing the flexibility of development. We have prioritized redevelopment in our downtown with the new building 410 West Broadway, which will feature 40-some apartments and an expanded Greentree co-op grocery. It is also important to focus on redeveloping our older buildings and restore the lived-in feel to our historic downtown. As millennials and younger generations enter the workforce, downtowns with many amenities will play an important role in attracting employers, young professionals, and as a byproduct, also be energy efficient and reduce our use of resources by multiplying the effect of not having to build out into our communities and use extra resources for infrastructure. The emerging threat of climate change to our area is the effect of the rain cycle and food production. As Mount Pleasant does not have much agricultural land, I will focus on precipitation as it affects our homes. In recent years, and especially this year, we have seen the devastation of flooding in our region. This could be linked to changes in precipitation patterns and land use policy. As a governmental entity, the city has focused our efforts to increase water retention capability for new development. This will help diminish the likelihood that our homes will be flooded by backed up stormwater drains like 2017. This effort obviously is aided by cooperation with Union Township, and this is especially important because rain does not recognize man-drawn boundaries and increases the efficiency of our efforts. Another maybe less recognized problem is the effect of our reflectivity and absorption of light and heat from the sun, otherwise known as the urban heat effect. When reflectivity is high and absorption is low, our ground temperatures can remain at normal levels. Important to this role is reducing paved surfaces and increasing green space and tree coverage. The City of Mount Pleasant offers free tree planting for our residents in the right-of-way and features trees in our downtown. This will help keep our local temperatures from rising due to the local effects of urban heat absorption and reflectivity. Possibly our greatest resource is the Chippewa River. Due to farm practices and lack of regulation of septic systems, the river has seen high levels of E. coli in the summer months. The Saginaw Chippewa tribe regularly tests and reports on the river conditions. Mount Pleasant has entered into joint efforts to bring awareness and to produce environmental testing of our groundwater to protect this crucial resource from pollution. We have also partnered with Nottawa Township to treat their wastewater as they transition to a wastewater sewer system. This will be a large step forward to protect our river from waste. This effort is combined with efforts by Isabella County, who has required testing of septic systems with home sales. As many people know, our trash and recycling is incentivized to increase recycling and reduce waste. While our recycling is a flat fee per month, our trash is cost by how much you use. So if you can use less trash and recycle more, you will pay less at the end of the month. We also allow composting to further this effort. We are recently converting our wastewater treatment to use UV light to reduce the use of chemicals and eliminate the introduction of those chemicals to the river. This upfront cost will pay off in many dividends in becoming a safer and more environmentally friendly wastewater treatment system. As we move forward, I would like to ask our residents and our community members to focus on the master plan, which the City Commission will have a hearing on November 6th. And our future aspiration is to potentially do a sustainability or carbon audit like the City of Traverse City. Those are things that are really important to me. And at this point, I will hand it over to City Manager Nancy Ridley for any comments she'd like to share.
Thank you, Mayor, for that lead-in. I appreciate the mayor taking the yeoman's effort on this today. We've had a bit of an unprecedented week here at our city organization, so he really took the yeoman's effort in preparing for today. So I would just like to add a couple things to what the mayor has indicated. First of all, currently we have a city vision statement that we want to be a city that is safe, clean, healthy, and environmentally conscious. So at the city organization level, the mayor focused more on the policy level, but within our organization, we try to make incremental steps towards that each year. And what we have found, as we mentioned in the promotional video for this great event, is that doing many small things can add up to big impacts. So instead of trying to hit one large home run, we try to hit singles every year to make small steps forward in trying to do our part to impact climate change, sustainability, and resiliency. A couple of the items that I would add to that the mayor mentioned is at our wastewater treatment plant, the representatives from CMU have talked about the impact of methane. As we process our wastewater at the City of Mount Pleasant, we create a lot of methane in that process. And for years now, we've been capturing that methane and using it within the plant to provide the heating and cooling within the buildings and the structures. So it's part of that recycle effort where what we create, we reuse. We've also worked really closely with the county, Union Township, the tribe, and the road commission on a large stormwater study so that we can understand how all of our drainage systems are interrelated, which ones may or may not be overloaded, and what we all can be doing collaboratively together over the next years to make sure those rain events that the mayor mentioned don't have detrimental impacts. And I should have mentioned CMU in that too, because CMU is one of our larger partners with that. And as President Davies mentioned, we collaborate regularly and have been very pleased with some of the stormwater improvements that the CMU staff is implementing as part of grants that were received. So that will protect not only our city, but the out county too, where our drains go to. Speaking of the drains, we always do a lot of efforts to protect our river as well. And we work very closely with the Saginaw Chippewa Indian tribe, not only on the E. coli that the mayor mentioned, but also on protecting erosion of the river. And we've instituted a number of efforts over the last couple of years to do more native plantings along the riverbanks and also to put some riprap to protect the erosion that sometimes happens in the Chippewa River. And then lastly, I would mention that lighting is another important thing that we've focused on. When the mayor talked about non-motorized transportation, part of that is also the increased pedestrian lighting that we've installed throughout the city over the last years to make it so that individuals feel more safe walking when they're out and about. And all of that lighting has been LED, and we've converted many of our lights both inside and outside to LED. And inside, we also have a number of motion sensors we use. So those are just a few examples of some of the smaller things we've been doing incrementally over time to try to do our part to assist as well. So with that, I would conclude my remarks, and both the mayor and I will stick around for any questions that may come up at the end. So thank you.
Thank you so much to the both of you for this wonderful overview of what the city is doing now and what you aspire to do with the input and support of citizens. That is so important. That's our job. For an example of individual initiative, we welcome Dr. Jim Hageman, co-founder of TreesNOW Isabella, who served as interim vice president of research at CMU from 2011 to 2013, and is dean of the College of Graduate Studies and vice provost for research at CMU from 2000 to 2006. Jim?
Thank you, Marie. Let me first say it's a real pleasure and honor to be here as a member of this panel on the community's actions. Liz Bradshaw and the huge team of people who have assisted in helping to get this summit into a reality. It's no small feat. I also very much appreciate the long-term efforts you put into the CCL in getting some political solutions, which we badly need in order to move forward. My job here this morning is to talk a little bit about an organization that David Alm and I started. We call it TreesNOW Isabella. And we started thinking about this in the summer of 2019, which seems like about 10 years ago at this point with all that's going on. What we began to think about was what might we do to address climate change? What can people do? And it seems like at times such an overwhelming question. So many parts and so big a question and problem. That individuals feel like throwing up their hands and saying, oh, what can I do? So we thought about it. And after looking at various options, we were looking for something that many people could do and that in fact most families could do. And what we decided was the solution was get people to plant a tree. And so I appreciate very much the mayor's comments, which lead nicely into some of the things I will be saying. So the first thing that we did was not being an expert in trees, we looked into the literature, and it turns out there are lots of things published on trees. Carbon capture, of course, oxygen production, of course. There's still some debate among scientists about how much carbon a tree can capture, but it's definitely an amount of carbon. Trees also, a lot of people don't understand, put a lot of CO carbon into the ground, into the soil, not just through their roots, but through their fungal connections. So lots of documents. These were published works, most of them peer-reviewed. We began to assemble a list of the things that trees can do in addition to capturing carbon. And one of these is, I'm just going to go through the list here of things that we found. Improve air quality by trapping noxious gases. These include NO2, sulfur dioxide, and particulate waste. They reduce cooling costs. For example, a differential temperature on a wall that has shade on it in the summer and one that doesn't can be as high as 40 degrees Fahrenheit. That's a big difference. If you're putting up a lot of apartment houses with no trees on the west side of them, I could point a few of those out in town. There's a huge opportunity to save energy. So this would reduce planting a lot of trees, sufficient trees, would reduce the heat island effect in urban areas, including Mount Pleasant. What some people also overlook is that trees put in the right place around your house dramatically reduce your heating costs in the winter, not just your cooling costs in the summer. And this is because of trapping, making a dead airspace around the building and preventing the cooling effects that strong winds would normally generate. Trees also reduce storm water runoff for pretty obvious reasons of making a canopy and also the roots holding the soil in place. So that in itself also typically improves water and soil quality by holding it in place. Trees reduce street noise. They screen UV light, which reduces the maintenance cost in many cases. They improve, of course, the incidents, the wildlife, the number and variety of species that are found in an area. And interestingly enough, they improve physical and mental health. And anybody who has walked in our city parks or county parks knows the tremendously strong efforts they've made in putting in trees and how pleasant it is to walk in those parks, how you could let some of your troubles go when you do. Also, studies have shown that having trees in parking lots and other places along the verge increase shoppers coming to businesses. And finally, having trees all over town increase a sense of community. So having found those things, which seem like lots of good reasons, in addition to carbon capture, and many of which contribute to energy conservation, we wanted to know what sort of coverage does Mount Pleasant have? So David Hoffman and I traveled up to see Nia Becker, who's the district for. She's a highly trained individual from Michigan Tech, and she was able to do a complex analysis of Mount Pleasant itself, and she was able to calculate from her geologic maps and aerial views that Mount Pleasant has only 22% canopy. That's a low number. At first we couldn't believe it, but when you start driving around town, you say, oh, here's a vacant lot here. Oh, here's 300 acres of grass here. We could certainly have some trees in some of those places. There are places the city has been trying hard by offering free trees to verges along fronts, and I think they're taking up on that deal, but no doubt more can be done in that direction. But in general, our parks, I think, are absolutely terrific. So the next, having convinced ourselves that tree planting was probably a good idea, the next step was doing the legwork, because two of us couldn't really be very impressive as a force in the community. So we traveled around door to door. This was pre-COVID, of course, and we've ended up with a list of some 35 people from the community who are interested in being associated with a tree planting effort. Different levels of commitment. Most of these people, unlike myself, are working full time, but we have on our roster now city and county officers, USDA employees, realtors and people from other businesses, Mount Pleasant Public School members, the member of Relief Michigan, and other tree planting organizations, the Saginaw Chippewa tribal members, and university faculty and staff. So it's a pretty much a cross-community group that represents different points of view, which is what we need in thinking about where to plant trees and when to plant trees. The next step was to make sure we knew what we were doing in planting trees so they would be successful. And so we contacted a very helpful fellow, Lauren Davis, in Grand Rapids. And Grand Rapids is known for their terrific approach to tree planting. And Lauren Davis runs the Urban Forest Project and has done so for some years. He really took us through the nuts and bolts of how they increase their canopy coverage in Grand Rapids. And what we need to do to not just plant a tree and walk away, that's never going to be successful. You have 2 years of work to do after you get the tree in the ground. So this was somewhat eye-opening, but something we needed to know before we moved forward. So the first meeting, it was our first and last meeting. It was held in December at noon on the 4th of December. Things intervened. We haven't been able to hold a face-to-face meeting since, but we have communicated with the members through email and so on, phone calls. One of the things that came out of that meeting, though, was very useful to us. They said, let's get busy planting trees. Let's not mess around trying to get a 501c3, which is a lot of paperwork, and you have to have officers, and you have to have all kinds of requirements in order to qualify for that. So David and I scratched our heads thinking about that and decided maybe the thing to do was to go to the United Way of Gratiot Isabella County. So we went to see Annie Sanders, the executive director of that, and Tina Dillard, who's the financial person, and they were able to sign us up and so we can ride their 501c3 coattails. So we are, in essence, a 501c3. All fiduciary matters go to them. So any contributions, any grants go to them, and Tina Dillard holds the checkbook, and so any outflow of money comes through United Way. So that seemed like a good solution to this problem. So I think I mentioned earlier, Melinda Jones, she is the executive director of Relief Michigan. And so we wanted to get a project that we could point to and say, well, we accomplished something here. And so as it turns out, fortuitously, tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock, we will be planting 15 trees donated by DTE, acquired through Melinda Jones' wonderful efforts. And we have 15 groups of people who cohabit so they can safely work together in planting a tree. Everybody will wear a mask. We will try not to create a new center of infection over in Bancher Schoolyard. But we are looking forward very much to getting 15 trees in the ground. As some of you may know, the power company had to chop out a lot of trees that were screening them from Mission Avenue. So those trees served as a sound barrier and a barrier from the noxious fumes coming from the street. They disappeared, and the playground itself has very little shade. So we chose where we should put these and so forth. And thanks to the good work of Josh Rhodes, who works for the Mount Pleasant Schools, and the principal of the school, as well as others who have been very supportive in getting this done. So with that, I'll conclude my remarks, but I will put up a little ad there. I hope you can see that. That is our website, and that is due to the wonderful work of my co-founder, David Allen. And you can see projects that are that we're having a planning stage in addition to this one, and also you can donate. We have a site there where you can donate. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Jim. That's a wonderful example of a personal initiative that you and David Alm have started, and that is a model for all of us to find something that we can research or initiate with friends or family. And I hope you've recruited a lot of help today to plant the trees that we need to improve the health of our city and the climate. So please check out his website. Next is an example of an organization focused on solving climate change. Emily Zoot, a volunteer with Mount Pleasant Citizens Climate Lobby, Citizens Climate Education, is a certified public accountant. She teaches accounting at Ferris State University, has an MBA from CMU, and previously worked as a finance manager in Ferris's administration and finance division. Prior to joining Ferris University in January of 2015, Emily worked in finance and accounting at Dow Chemical. Emily, share with us your thoughts on solving climate change.
Absolutely. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Good, great. Well, thank you, Marie, for having me, and really thank you to the whole conference committee for putting on this event. I'm so excited that this is happening, and I feel very honored to be part of the panel. So as Marie mentioned, I volunteer for the Mount Pleasant chapter of the Citizens Climate Lobby. In fact, I'm on the steering committee for the MPCCL. So you'll hear me refer to Citizens Climate Lobby as I talk. You'll hear me refer to it as MPCCL for the Mount Pleasant chapter, or just CCL for the national chapter. So just to sort of shorten my talk, you'll hear me refer to it in the acronym. So I want to start by talking about why I joined MPCCL and why I started volunteering. So first, climate change is personal to me, and I really would argue that it should be personal to everyone. First and foremost, I am a mother. I am a mother of 2 children, and I sincerely worry about the world that I leave for them. But I don't just think about my own children. I think about all children. And all future generations that will inhabit this earth. So, of course, my husband and I, we've implemented our own personal measures to help the environment. We have a hybrid vehicle. We recycle. We use energy in our home responsibly. And I really do strongly believe in our individual efforts and I do believe our individual efforts do make a difference. But I was anxious to do more. I also look at climate change from a business perspective. So as Marie mentioned, I'm an assistant professor in the College of Business at Ferris State University. Before joining academia, I worked for a decade in the finance and accounting field. So I think that I really understand and I appreciate the unique risk that climate change poses to individual businesses, their stakeholders, as well as the US and world economy. Right now, companies are getting increasing pressure from stakeholders to disclose their climate change risk. Eventually, companies will need to respond, and really some already have. And, as companies start to realize more and more losses related to climate change, things like damage from extreme weather events, disrupted operations, asset devaluation, increasing insurance costs, just to name a few, they really are going to need to start addressing their own contributions to the climate crisis. So really, climate change is just simply an issue that the business world cannot ignore. So I joined CCL because I wanted to be part of the climate solution. Citizens Climate Lobby gives me the opportunity to do just that, to be part of a solution. So one of the videos earlier sort of talked a little bit about CCL, but I'll share a few more things. So CCL, or CCE, Citizens Climate Lobby and Citizens Climate Education, is a nonprofit, nonpartisan organization working for effective climate solutions at the national level. So this larger organization includes many local chapters around the country, Mount Pleasant being just one of them. So I'm so honored to be part of this local chapter and to really be connected to this larger group, this larger organization called CCL. Being connected to that larger group gives us at the local level opportunities for training, education, as well as just getting support for the local initiatives that we're doing here in Mount Pleasant and the surrounding community. So I look at my involvement in CCL as sort of two-tiered. I have opportunities to educate and support my local community, as well as opportunities to advocate for change at the national level. So let's talk a little bit about I'd like to share a little bit about what we're doing at the local level. So the Mount Pleasant chapter of CCL. Right now, we're working on an initiative to provide assistance to local businesses and to promote community interest in energy savings initiatives. So currently, we're seeking information from local business by way of a survey to sort of gauge their current energy savings practices, as well as to just understand their interest in learning more about energy savings practices. So part of that initiative is we are working on creating a digital, what we're calling a business toolkit. This toolkit will contain a wide range of resources for businesses and organizations, including, how to do a cost-benefit analysis when deciding whether or not to implement an energy-saving initiative or practice, some funding sources for those types of initiatives, how to calculate your own carbon footprint, as well as just some general information about climate change and its impact. In line with that initiative is we are also planning to host an energy savings conference next year for businesses. So please stay tuned for that. Later on, I will share our website and at the local level and at the national level, and we'll be posting more information about that conference as it takes shape on our website. So that's kind of what we're doing right now at the local level. Let's talk a little bit about the national level. So on a national scale, Citizens Climate Lobby, Citizens Climate Education is advocating for legislative action. Specifically, we support HR Bill 763, which is the Energy Innovation and Carbon Dividend Act. So this specific bill is a bipartisan solution which would put a fee on fossil fuels like coal, oil, and gas. So this fee starts low and then it grows over time, hopefully encouraging energy companies, industries, and consumers to move to cleaner, cheaper options. So the revenue from that fee, the idea would be that it would be distributed equally among citizens, making this a revenue neutral bill. Government does not get bigger. The revenue from the carbon fee would be put back into the pockets of citizens. And the way that this will be distributed is through the Internal Revenue Service, so the IRS, who this organization already has the means to distribute money, as we saw from the stimulus checks from the COVID-19 pandemic. So the IRS is in a position where they can really distribute that revenue back to the people. So part of this policy also protects U.S. manufacturers and jobs with what's called a border adjustment, or a carbon border adjustment. So imported goods will be assessed a border carbon adjustment, and goods exported from the U.S. will receive a refund. And really, there are a lot of different pieces to this specific bill. But the important part is that it is estimated that this policy will reduce America's emissions by at least 40% in the first 12 years. That is big impact. That's the big impact that we need to really make a difference with climate change. So to advocate for this specific bill, HR 763, our local Mount Pleasant chapter has met with our Congress people many times. We meet with them, we call them, we write them, hoping to educate them about HR 763, as well as to encourage them really to consider supporting the bill. So I do believe, as I mentioned, in our individual efforts and the value of our individual efforts to do the right thing for our Earth and our current and future inhabitants. But I truly believe that it will take legislative action at the national level to make a real difference to climate change. And I'm not alone. 3,589 U.S. economists, 4 former chairs of the Federal Reserve, 27 Nobel laureate economists, and 15 former chairs of the Council of Economic Advisors have all signed a public statement supporting a carbon tax and dividend. This is the largest public statement of economists in history. So in addition to that public statement of economists, the Market Risk Advisory Committee of the U.S. Commodity Futures Trading Commission has a subcommittee. The subcommittee is called the Climate-Related Market Risk Subcommittee. This subcommittee recently released a report called Managing Climate Risk in U.S. Financial Systems. A central major finding of this report is that climate change could pose systemic risks to the U.S. financial system. And their number one recommendation in this report is that the U.S. should establish a price on carbon. They call it the single most important step to manage climate risk and to drive the appropriate allocation of capital. Our bill, H.R. 763, is in line with both of these recommendations. So I guess I just want to close by saying that there's no argument that climate change is real. It's real and it's happening and it's scary. And climate change will affect all of us, and sometimes in surprising ways. You know, we're not just talking about extreme weather events, although we've seen how devastating those can be. We're also talking about financial economic risk related to climate change. A disruption to the US financial system would also be devastating. But there are solutions to this problem. The focus of this conference is the fact that we have solutions. There are things that we can do, and our collective efforts can make a real difference. We can make a difference in our own individual lives, in our own communities, but we absolutely need national leadership and action, as well as international collaboration to truly make a difference with climate change. So I'm excited about the work that we're doing in CCL, both locally and nationally. I'd love to share, and I'll go ahead and post it in the chat in a moment here, the website to both our local chapter as well as the national organization for CCL. I highly encourage you to research HR 763, the Energy Innovation and Dividend Act. Please research that. Please consider joining CCL. Please consider reaching out to your own Congress people, asking them to take a stand on climate change and to really start making a difference at that national level, because that's what we need. So thank you so much again for having me. I think my time is up, so we can move on from here, but I'll be around if any questions come up later.
Thank you so much, Emily. You've been a very eloquent spokesperson for why everyone can consider volunteering for Mount Pleasant CCL or CCE in Mount, if you live in Mount Pleasant. But she mentioned that there are chapters. I think there are 21 around Michigan and more than 400 around the country, and 60 around the world, by the way. But you've also explained why the Energy Innovation and Carbon Dividend Act is good for business and the rest of us. So thank you for that. And now for an example of a business, we have Laura Coffey, Marketing and Owner Service Manager at Greentree Cooperative Grocery. Laura has worked at Greentree for 14 years, having lived in Mount Pleasant since 2001. She loves food, art, books, and spending time with her husband and cats. Maybe we've had a lot more of that, I don't know, but I think Greentree as an essential service has been open. Thank you, Laura.
Yes, thanks, Marie. We have been open during the entirety of this, but I haven't been going anywhere when I'm not working. So the cat's like that for sure.
Right.
So as Marie said, I work at Greentree Cooperative Grocery in downtown Mount Pleasant. And when I was asked to be part of this panel, I had a hard time thinking what to talk about. And that wasn't because Greentree doesn't do things to try and address the climate crisis, but it's because there's so much to talk about. This is something that is incredibly pervasive. This is part of everything that all of us do every day, everywhere. You may not be thinking about it all the time, but literally every choice we make has the potential to affect how all of this eventually turns out. As has been said by several other people so far, the climate crisis is happening. This is not a question. This is something that exists all around us all the time. It affects what we eat, where it comes from, the products that we use, how they move from place to place, just everything. So it was really hard to sort of narrow that down. And I'm going to try and hit on a few different levels where we as a co-op work with these things while still keeping to time. So if you have more questions later, feel free to let me know. So I guess to start, something that you've heard a lot about is the little things that people can do, like reusable water bottles, reusable shopping bags, which we are still allowing, by the way. I know a lot of places aren't currently letting people use their own containers or packaging or bags for food. We will allow that. You just have to bag your own groceries if you bring your own bags. So please keep doing it. We appreciate it. We just need a little extra help on your end if you want to use them. But anyway, all of these little individual choices that you make from day to day, choosing to walk to run an errand, maybe planning everything on one day so you drive around town less, and all of these other reusable solutions are great, and they do make a difference. But as was discussed by Emily, the kind of impact that we need, things that we have to do to really, truly affect this stuff on a global scale is company-wide. We need things that are businesses. We need the government. We need organizations. We need cities and states and countries to just be doing these things all together as a group. Because at these organizational level, that affects not only how each individual person interacts with whatever service is being provided, that also affects the infrastructure that provides all of our goods and services. And that infrastructure has probably the biggest single effect on our energy usage. And our energy usage, as many of you know, can be dirty or clean. And we want it to be clean. So Greentree is a business, obviously. We're not a huge business, but we are a community-centered business, and we are, as was mentioned also earlier, expanding. So we are becoming bigger. We're building a new space that will be 4 times the current size and significantly more energy efficient than where we are right now, because our building is very old. I think you could probably even call it historic. And historic, while wonderful, doesn't generally mean energy efficient. But beyond that level, we're also a cooperative. And a cooperative is a business that is owned by the members of the community where it's located, instead of being owned by an individual person or another company that's far away. And the advantage of that model, being owned by the members of your community, is that you make decisions that affect your community thinking long term. You say, we want to be here. We've been here for 50 years. We want to be here for 50 more. And so when we're deciding, what new piece of equipment to put in our new building, we're thinking, how is the output of this going to affect the river that will be, I think, a couple 100 feet from the building? How will the setup of the loading area affect the small farmers that, while Mount Pleasant itself doesn't have a lot of agricultural land surrounding us, there's a lot of that. Michigan is, I think, the second most agriculturally diverse state in the entire country after California. And with all of the the fires and other issues that they're having out there, like that becomes even more important. So each of these little decisions we're making as a business, because of our cooperative structure, we're saying, how does this affect each of these other little pieces of the community that tie into what we do and who we are? So there's so many different things that I want to get into. Yes, I see Michigan is the second most agriculturally diverse. We have the most variety of crops after California, to the best of my knowledge. I mean, they may have redone those numbers at some point, but pretty consistently, that's where we fall. Because we have so many different types of little like microclimates in Michigan, we have all of these different kinds of agriculture that we can do here. Like the weather in the Upper Peninsula is different than the Lower Peninsula, and there are many different sections of, for example, in the Upper Peninsula, that's actually where I'm from, there are areas that are warmer and areas that get really heavy precipitation because they're near the lakes. There are parts that are colder, and it's the same down here. There are pieces of land that are suitable for farming animals, and they actually would not be very efficient to use for growing crops. And there's other places that are very well suited for things like wine or apple orchards. There are some places that are well suited for grain crops or beans. And so we have huge diversity within this state. All right, I'm going to loop back to agriculture in a second. I'm trying to keep track of the time. Like I said, there's so many pieces here. Really quickly, I know something that's been talked about a lot, recycling, reusing. We strive for energy efficiency and for packaging that's made with recycled materials. You know, our flyers are made from post-consumer recycled paper and printed with soy ink. You know, we try to take this into account at all the various levels. An example of something small that the co-op does that might seem a little silly, we use those towel rolls in our bathroom instead of paper towels. And people always say, oh, that's gross, you're reusing it. But it's these giant rolls of towels that are cleaned by a professional company, and you pull on it and you get a new section and a new section, and the old part rolls back up into the back of the machine, and you don't touch the part that anybody else used. So they're still perfectly fine in our current COVID environment. And when they get all rolled up back into the back, we take it out and put it in a new one, and it gets washed again. And that saves, I haven't done the exact math, but I mean, easily hundreds, if not thousands of rolls of paper towels every year, just in our one little tiny bathroom. So it's things like that where we're consciously making choices to use green cleaning products. We use BPA receipt paper in our credit card machines to prevent repeated exposure for our staff and the extra waste that creates when you touch that paper and the quality that you get when you recycle it. So there's all these little tiny things in the store. But the bigger picture stuff, the stuff that I think is really fascinating when you get into it, is I'm going to dive back into that agriculture question for a second. As Marie said, they weren't able to get a farmer or someone like that for the panel. So I'm going to try and touch on it a little bit for you. So local farmers, one of the big things that we do is carry and support local farmers' products year round, and other types of local producers too. I mean, things like soaps and canned beans and tortilla chips, Michigan roasted coffees. Like we try to focus on and care about those things. But when it comes to farming, so something that we saw recently during the just everybody rushing to the stores and stocking up in an effort not to go out was a lot of empty shelves. And we saw that in many places around town. But I can say, like, we never ran out of toilet paper. We didn't run out of things like butter or eggs or milk, hardly ever, because we were already carrying things from a small farmer, and we were able to reach out to another small farmer or another small producer and say, you know, normally we order this from somebody else. We're out right now. Can we carry your butter for a couple of weeks? And we were, because of our community-oriented nature, because we know the farmers and can say, you know what, you're out of eggs today. Does your neighbor have some? Like, who can we talk to? And just have that level of responsiveness because we work with these small farmers and producers. And they also have the advantage if a national chain runs out of their bags that they normally put their tortilla chips in, they're not going to send any out to anybody until they get their standard branded bags. If our local guys that are producing and baking these chips in a very small scale commercial kitchen run out of the bags that they have, we can say, whatever, put it in a different bag and stick a sticker on it with your name. And we're happy to still carry those. And they can do that responsiveness in order to continue providing food to our community. So we're able to support them in things like, we've had farmers purchase more chickens in order to increase their egg capacity just for our little store. People have been able to add deliveries and buy equipment because we commit in February or March to buy all of the carrots that they can grow all summer. So the advantage of this cooperative model is we can talk directly to these people and support them, and then build this sustainability into the environment of our area and contribute to the overall diversity of our food system regionally as well as hyper locally. And that's the kind of impact that you can have by doing something like joining a co-op, or when you go and choose cereal, buy from a company that uses renewable energy, that you can do by saying, I'm going to buy carrots that are grown within 50 miles of my home instead of on the other side of the country where, unfortunately, everything's on fire right now. And we're having to, drive semi-trucks thousands of miles in order to get it to you. So when it comes right down to it, well, it matters that you're, bringing your own coffee cup when you go somewhere versus taking the paper one. It matters a lot more that you are choosing to support and buy from people that grow food and companies that think about all levels of this process when they're making the goods and services that you're choosing to utilize. I feel like I'm coming up on time here. But like I said, there's just so many pieces to all of this process. And if I can just say one thing, it's don't forget to look at all the levels of the process and to think about not just, okay, so the company that's shipping this to me has XYZ in terms of labor practices. Think further back down the line than that. Think who had to make this? What kind of box is this in? Was the water that was fed to these animals, taken in a sustainable way? Were these seeds produced in a way that didn't end up spraying chemicals on the people who had to harvest it? And just try and go as far back down the chain as you can when you're making these daily choices, whether you're shopping at Greentree or going to a big chain or ordering something in, online. It doesn't really matter. Just look at all of those steps and make the best choices that you can. So I'll call it there, or else I'll go on for another 20 minutes.
Thank you, Laura. You have certainly explained why Greentree has become such a valued institution in Mount Pleasant over the years. I'm sure many people are looking forward to Greentree's new building and your expanded services there. Now we'll open it up for questions from our audience. Sil Lorand is our moderator. I appreciate that. What questions do we have for our panelists? Sil, are you muted?
Yeah, she's muted.
Yeah. Unmute, Sil. There you go. Oops. There you go. Now
there you go.
Super. Great. Do you have a question to share from the chat?
I don't have a question. Wait a minute. I do have one question. I have mostly appreciation for all of the panelists from various community and university members. Here is one question for everyone. How can people find out about all these levels in the process?
Good question.
Well, I can take this one if other people want to join in, obviously. But the first thing that you can do is to think about a particular product that you consume, because it's hard to look at the whole thing at first. It's easier sometimes to narrow in on one item. And so say there's a particular brand that you like, go to the company's website, first of all, and check their about page and their frequently asked questions. A lot of the time you can get some beginning information there that will help you understand where to go in order to find out more. So that's if it's a particular product. Another thing you can do is ask the people that work in the place where you're buying it. And they can usually tell you, oh, that comes from a regional distributor, or yes, this comes from Monroe Family Organics, for example, is a farm that we do a lot of work with. And we can say, this is where they're located. These are their practices. I can show you some pictures of the farm. So depending on how local or non-local the product is, you'll be able to get more direct information like that. And then the other thing to do would be to choose a stage in the process that you're curious about. You could look up, how does cattle farming work? And you can compare, CAFOs, which are these confined animal feeding operations, to local farming, to this new thing where they it's forest farming, where the cows live in a forest and are part of a multi-level ecosystem. So choose a part of the process and look that up, or take a particular product and try and follow it backwards and forward through the chain by starting with that simple about information. So hopefully that gets you started at least.
I have another question here. Mayor.
Excuse me, Sil. Did anyone else on the panel have any additions to that first question? That's all right. We want to get to as many questions as possible about how you investigate the different levels of process when you're examining a problem. Emily?
Yeah, I suppose I would just add that it can be challenging. I think Laura did a really good job of kind of giving us an idea of how to get started with that. Unfortunately, in the US, companies, we don't require full disclosure necessarily with companies and everything that they're doing. However, you're finding that more and more companies are voluntarily disclosing these things because their stakeholders, their customers, their various stakeholders want to know. So more and more, as Laura described, this information is available on the internet, on the websites of the different companies. So I would just add that it's not full disclosure necessarily, but more and more we're seeing this information being provided by companies. So it's getting easier and easier to investigate those things.
Thank you. Sil, you said you had another question there.
Yes, this is for Mayor Will Joseph or for Nancy Ridley. Can you tell us more about what the city is doing to expand or connect bike paths through Mount Pleasant and surrounding areas?
Sure. Thank you for the question. If you really look at our master plan and especially our capital improvement plan, we're looking at expanding, if you're familiar with the river walk through the city, and connecting that path, which is very bike and walk friendly, to the regional pathway that connects to the path north and south of Mount Pleasant. And some of that is going to be in our new master plan that we're rewriting for the Mount Pleasant 2050 plan. Because of the pandemic, we have put a little bit of a hold on some of our capital improvement projects that are more non-essential. And so I'm not sure if this one specifically is being delayed, but my guess is that it would be just because of some budget constraints. But that is the sort of the general status of that particular project. We're rewriting our master plan, and we're hoping to pass it by the end of the year. And then after that master plan is passed, we're going to relook at our non-motorized transportation plan. And that looks at walking and biking and bike routes and probably reshape that, especially when it comes to the design of our roads. And so I would sort of encourage people to look at the city's website, be familiar with the master plan, and feel free to reach out to me, myself, or the other commissioners. And then if Nancy has anything to add.
I do have a couple things to add, if you don't mind. Just in the last couple weeks, the city completed the non-motorized trail at Island Park. So now you can be in Island Park and do a complete 1 mile loop without having to walk or bike in the roadway. So that's one recent improvement we made. Also, this spring, we completed a project in partnership with Central Michigan University and the Charter Township of Union to complete the path through the university smart zone area so that you can get from the trail that comes all the way up from Alma and Shepherd and goes down Deerfield Road. Now it goes all the way through the smart zone so you can get up to Broomfield Road, and it's paved the whole way. So those are two recent things we've done. And then our park staff regularly has conversations with the Mid-Michigan Pathways Group to talk about what we need to do within the city to provide that connection between the north and south loop the north and south connection that they're doing through this Mid-Michigan area. So we stay in contact with them regularly to make sure that our plans are in concert with what they're trying to do.
Thank you, Nancy. Sil?
Here's a question for the mayor and city manager. Is it possible that they might use a climate action plan to spur and integrate the choices they are making now?
So that's a little bit about kind of my future aspirations, I think, of the commission. I mentioned the plan that Traverse City has done, and what they did is they sort of did a baseline of their carbon output in terms of their city operations, and it's a really nice plan. If you just look up Traverse City, I think it's CO2 audit. It's like the first or second link. And it talks a lot about how they look at, their operations and how they can make them more carbon neutral and obviously environmentally friendly. And that is something that I personally like to pursue. But we do everything as a team at the city. No one person has ultimate power. And so I would encourage you to talk to my fellow city commissioners and encourage them to do the same.
I have a question for Emily. What kind of headway are we making with the legislatures from Michigan in terms of accepting or promoting the pending legislation?
That's a good question. Marie, what are we at now for supporters? Do you know the number off the top of your head?
Excuse me, was your question about national supporters, Jim?
Yeah, our national representatives.
HR 763.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm thinking the number is now at 81.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Was around.
It's in the House, and it's 81, the last count that I saw. Good question. I would also interject, Will, and Nancy, isn't there a hearing coming up on the master plan soon that folks could have input in? What's the date on that?
The public hearing is on Monday, November 9th.
Okay, let's get that on our calendar. And that is a perfect opportunity to get a sense of what's going on and to, is more input available to be entered? I know you've been having hearings previously here, September and October, but.
I would encourage people who are interested in the master plan to obviously give it a read. There are 5 different sections dealing with different parts of the plan. And we're going to have a work session coming up pretty soon on that. I believe that is our next meeting, which is the 26th of October. And so if you can reach out to your commissioners before then, that's a good time to get your concerns addressed to them. But also we're having the public hearing on November 9th, and you can come to the city commission meeting, which will be held virtually. And so you can find the Zoom link on the city's website, and you can speak at the public hearing. But you can also, at any time, write an email, and that'll get to us. And we'll obviously, we like public participation, especially in our large planning documents, because that's going to shape policy for many years to come.
Exactly. And the political will, which means the public will, is what eventually changes policies. And that's what I hear Will saying that is necessary when we want to make changes locally. I did see a reference in the chat to someone noting that in terms of representatives in support of the HR 763, one of them is Representative Kildee, Ann Levin, and Lawrence from Michigan, who are co-sponsoring this bill. And Representative Kildee is also a CMU graduate. So CMU is making it's still doing great work in the world on this score, as well as many others. Another question, Syl, we have, let's see, a couple more minutes. So,
okay. This is to everyone. Is it unrealistic to expand curbside recycling for all Mount Pleasant residents?
Will, you're muted. There you go.
I guess so we do have curbside recycling for all of our I guess like house residentials and duplexes and sort of building styles like that. If you live in an apartment complex, unfortunately, your options are a little bit limited, and you can take your recycling to the recycling center, which is just on River Road. But because it's private property, we can't, the recycling people can't actually go on to that property unless they have the permission of the property owner. We did pass an amendment to our zoning ordinance that requires, if there are structural changes to the apartment buildings within the city, that they could be required by the zoning ordinance to put recycling amenities on the property. And that was something that I sort of pushed and was actually passed unanimously on the city council. And so I was glad to have the cooperation of my colleagues for that. But that's obviously not a solution for tomorrow. That's more down the road. And so for people who live in rental housing, especially apartments, I would say, you can take your recycling to the MRF, or you might want to get a few of your neighbors and talk to your landlord and say that you really want this, because we can't really impose it on them until there's a special use permit related to their property. I know I saw a question, I think, in the chat about outside of the city limits recycling, and obviously unfortunately, that's a little bit out of our hands because we deal within the city. But I would encourage you to reach out to your local elected officials, whether that's your township supervisors, your township trustees, and your county commissioners.
Mm-hmm. What perhaps you spoke to this, but is there a possibility of these various governmental units pooling their contracts in a way that would expand the services? Has that ever been discussed?
So we are in a joint agreement with the county because they run the material recycling facility. But it takes more buy-in, I think, from other community partners and governmental entities, because I think that unfortunately, with just the price of oil, that plastics have become almost recycling plastics doesn't turn the same profit as it used to. There's less buyers in the market. And so that makes it harder for those recycling facilities to operate in the in the net positive. Also, I know that some of our local companies like Mitsuba have sought out other companies that reuse plastics for some of their waste, and that's kind of where we're at, where we have to really focus, I think, as a society, on plastics that are more reusable and come from maybe more or biodegradable. And unfortunately, the condition of a lot of plastics is that they're one use, and once that use is over, there's not much you can do with them, and then it becomes the next layer in the geological time.
Capsule.
And so
get a dog, and then you'll have a second use.
Yeah.
And that's exactly where we're at now, I think. And I suspect our keynote speaker will address this too. But change is happening so fast because obviously the thought about what to do with plastics and recycling them has been in operation for some, 40, 50 years now. And it's gone through the growth and learning process that you mentioned, where the prices go up and down and lots of factors to that. But I just recently saw that, again, this is where university research comes in, that a young woman has started a company because she has patented a process that can finally, this is a new breakthrough, break down polyethylene plastics, which have been so difficult, and return them to be competitive with the virgin petrochemicals. So that's, these huge breakthroughs are being made daily because so many people are realizing that there is need, but also opportunity to develop products and solutions that will be very financially lucrative. I mean, because they're so much needed. The demand is growing, and that's what we need to do, as Emily said, as stakeholders in nudging our companies to do their R&D, to nudge our legislators to do R&D, and get these things moving. And that's the other thing that I understand about the Energy and Innovation Climate Dividend Bill, that because it stimulates the market, then everyone is incentivized to research and development and adopting these measures. Okay, I think we're about at a time where we need to, stop. I'll let us run over there. So we will be taking a break, but I know you'll want to stay. I thank all of our panelists today and for fielding your questions. You'll definitely want to hear Dr. Andrew Hoffman, our exciting keynote speaker, whose presentation will start at 12 noon. In the meantime, we'll have a 10-minute break in which you can watch short videos from groups that were planning to share their information in person in March, as previously explained. So I urge you to save your chat, because there are 3 little dots there that on your screen that will allow you to save chat, and you'll need to do that before you leave so that you get the complete list. And then you'll have these valuable links that people have been entering in answer to questions. Thank you so much.